Boom! Yes folks, Hume here again. How are you? So, in this video, just as we did a few videos ago, I want to take some time to discuss something that a senior officer of the national security apparatus said in public. This time we're talking about the Commissioner of Police, Mr. Allister Guevarro. Alright, and we're discussing it not from a point of view of poking fun or anything like that. I mean, there'll always be space for that. We know how we trainees are, right? The most important thing is that I want to point out the error, point out the correct solution, all as part of just a little general nudge to the police service and to the commissioner to be a little more careful in terms of how we are presenting numbers, because the mistakes, we don't want these kinds of mistakes. We don't want these kind of mistakes if we're trying to be a serious country, right? I mean, mistakes will be made, so we don't want to belabor the point. We just want to encourage going forward. All right, so the quote which was made on the 10th of October 2025 is as follows. The Commissioner of Police said, "Look at the crime statistics for Tobago over the past year, and you would see the comparative analysis between 2024 and 2025. Last year at this time, Tobago had 25 homicides. This year it's 6. And of the 6, 4 of them have been solved already. That's a 300% decrease in homicide in Tobago." Right. And then a little later on in the same interview, he said, we should clap for that. All right. So I want to join the Commissioner of Police and the TTPS in clapping for the massive reduction in the homicide rate between 2024 and 2025. From 24 for the period under consideration to 26 for the same period this year. Right? Of course, we consider the same period last year versus the same period this year. But I want to take a little time to discuss the maths of it, because we need to be aware of these things, and as small and as insignificant as it might seem to some people, these are the small details that make a big difference in a serious country, if we're trying to be a serious country. All right? So there are people who just dismiss it, small thing, man, whatever. No, it's not small thing, right? And once you recognize it, the idea is we don't want to repeat that. So in other words, whatever steps need to be taken between the commissioner himself and his team of numeric advisors, we have to be careful how we present the numbers out there, right? Because the danger, and I made this point in the last video, the danger is that people who don't know better would take it and run with it, right? Take some kind of erroneous discussion of the figures and run with it, and they will put that in situations where they could influence other people. And people who know better, but their intentions might be nefarious, malicious, they would encourage the people who don't know better to spread the thing, and we don't want that, right? I am sure the Commissioner of Police don't want that, right? I am sure that they are already aware of the mistake. So this video is more for the people out there, right? Somebody somewhere, if they're hearing this, they will realize, well, all right, we had a little issue here, and you'll see what the correct thing is. And if you hear somebody running with the wrong thing, having seen this video, you will be in a better position to correct them. And if push comes to shove, you can say, hey, look at video here, listen to it. All right, so there we go. So the homicides in 2024 was 24, right? We quoting the figures that the man gave, 24 homicides in 2024 in Tobago. In 2025, we're down to 6, which means that we have a reduction of 18, right? That is the first calculation that anybody would make reasonable. 24 last year, 6 this year is 18 less than last year. And you realize immediately that that is plenty. And that is something to clap for. So we're clapping again. but it's not 300%. And we need to be very clear on that. We need to be very clear on that. We don't make these kinds of mistakes. We don't let these things pass without discussing it and looking to remedy going forward. Right? So, knowing that the answer is not 300, let me start by discussing what the correct answer is. So if you had this question in an SEA exam or a Form 1 and a term exam, right? And they say, you present the same situation and you ask them, what is the percentage decrease? It might be part of our number 1, yeah? Or it might be a number 2 or a number 3 in a multiple choice. What's the percentage decrease? The percentage decrease is the actual decrease that you could count divided by the amount that you're decreasing from. That will give you a fraction or a proportion. And then you multiply that by 100 to get it as a percent. Right? So the actual decrease is 18, 24 minus 6, right? 18 over 24. 24 being what you're decreasing from. And then multiply by 100 over 1. Right? You do little cancellations here. Right? 6 into 18 is 3. 6 into 24 is 4. Right? 4 into 100 is 25. 25 by 3 is 75%. So taking the 24, not the 25, because the 24 makes the calculation easier. He said 24, 25, let me go the 24. And you'll see exactly where the 300 come from. Because if we do that same calculation with 6 as the reference and not 24, then that is where you'll get the 300. So, and I'm putting it in red just for the effect, right? If we had said, I'm putting it here for, nah, I ain't got any space there, you know. If I put 18 over 6 multiplied by 100, right? That would be 6 into 18, 3. 3 by 100 is 300. Yeah, that calculation makes sense if you're using 6 as a reference. So in other words, if you're measuring whatever from 6, 300%, but we're measuring from 24, not 6. That is the most important part of the calculation. The most important part of the calculation is the reference that we're using. If we're talking about a decrease in homicides from 2024, then the reference can't be anything else but the figure from 2024, which is 24. Right? So with that in mind, you could see that this here is clearly wrong. But you understand the error, because 18 divided by 6 is 3. 3 by 100 is 300%. Right? So this is the correct answer. This is the wrong answer. This here is the mistake that would have been made by whoever. Alright? Now, a couple quick things to note here. One, in a situation like this, where you're measuring something physical that they could count, you can't have a decrease of more than 100%. What do we mean by a decrease of 100%? If the homicides decrease by 100%, it would mean that you would be less than 24 by all of the 24. So in other words, you go from 24 straight down to 0. So if we had 0 homicides, then that would be a 100% decrease. A 100% decrease in the homicides from 2024 to 2025. Right? If we're talking money, deficit, surplus, in that case, yes, you could go down below and end up with a negative number. What's the calculation now? So if we're saying that, let me say that we're going with the 300% decrease, right? The first thing we need to find out is, what is 300% of 24? Because we know it's not 18. Because 18 is 75% of 24, which is 3/4, right? 300% of 24 is, and it could only be of 24 we're talking about, right? It would be 300 over 100 multiplied by 24 over 1. That's the 300% there. Zeros cancel. 3 by 74. 3 by 24, sorry, will give you 72. So 300% of 24 is actually 72. Which means then that if you're saying that we decrease by 300%, it means that you start from 24 and you go down by 72. Excuse. 24 minus 72 is minus 48. Right? This calculation could make perfect sense if we're talking dollars and cents, money, fiscal, yeah, pecuniary. So you could move from a position where you have a surplus of 24 to a position where you're in deficit by 48. The deficit, of course, will be indicated by the minus sign. Right? That would make perfect sense if we're talking finance. But we're talking homicide. So this calculation cannot make sense in a situation where we're counting the physical thing that we could see, feel, and touch. Right? So apart from the fact that there was a mistake here, this calculation, even though mathematically valid, makes absolutely no sense in this context, and that is where your common sense intersects with what we refer to as book sense. Minus 48 homicides means absolutely nothing. Right? If you want to be absolutely facetious, you could say, as a lot of people have been saying, that minus 48 means you're actually resurrecting 48 people. So in other words, the minus sign being a signal of a reversal, something reversing, right? If we're talking about homicides, then this is a reverse homicide. These are reverse homicides, which we could class as a resurrection. So we could have fun, we could laugh at it, right? 48 resurrections. But we understand that it makes no sense. So in that sense, we see the mathematical error. However, and this is the part I wanted to get clear, if we're talking about increase, yes, you could have a 300% increase in the homicide rate. And so help me God, I hope we don't ever reach there in Tobago or in Trinidad. Right? We all have a vested interest in a reduction in any crime, homicide or otherwise. Right? But we need to understand the mathematics of it, so that when people say certain things, we understand what they're saying. And the other side of that is that the people who saying certain things, we don't want them saying erroneous things that will cause people who may or may not know better to be misled. Right? We live in the age of false information and things, AI and all kind of things. So we have to be real careful with these things. What we say nowadays, especially when it comes to numbers. Right? Nice. So if we have to increase by 300%, it will be this 24 plus the 300% of 24, which would be this 72 here. 24 plus 72 in that case would be 96. Let me put it down here just for the contrast, right? 24 plus 72 is equal to 96. So this is a 300% decrease. 24 minus 72 minus 48. This is a 300% increase. 24 plus 72, which is 96. As far as homicides go, we don't even want to think about that. All right, so we have to be very clear as to what we mean when we're saying what we mean to say. Yes? So I just want to take the opportunity again to thank the TTPS for their work in Tobago and in Trinidad. And we want that the officers at the level of commissioner and otherwise, the people involved in tallying the numbers and calculating whatever they have to calculate, just please be a little more careful, right? We don't want these kinds of mistakes going out there, right? And these things are things that they could double check. I am sure that there are competent mathematicians in the police service, right? We don't want this kind of thing going out, because these kinds of things, even if we assume that it was a genuine mistake, could lead to misinformation out in the general public, and we all have an instinctive sense of what misinformation could do in the political realm, in your general discourse, right? So that's basically it as far as this video is concerned. I just want to take a brief moment to mention that I have just posted up a playlist on negative numbers on YouTube. Alright, so check the YouTube channel Humemaths. I will post the link for that playlist underneath in the comments on this video on the social media as well. Right, I spent a lot of time discussing the negative number and what it could mean. So you see, we have a situation here where if we go a certain route, we end up with a negative number, and we understand that in certain situations it have no meaning there, and yet in other situations it could mean something. We talk about all that. We discuss the arithmetic of the negative numbers, your multiplication, your division, your addition, your subtraction, right? We talk about negative powers, right? So check it out. Check it out. There's a lot of good stuff in there. It's kind of long and it's kind of boring, right? But I want to encourage you to check it out. We also talk about the negative sign as an instrumental reversal, which we see here. The very idea that we could conceive of this as a resurrection, that is the idea. We see the negative sign, we know it means something. If we talk in homicide, then the negative had to mean the reverse of a homicide. I spent a lot of time talking about that too, right? So check out that playlist, right? I trust that we learn something. It's not about bacchanal, it's not about kicks. We go do that. Trinis like it, Ghanaians like it too, right? That is how we are as a people, but we have to treat serious things seriously. All right, so let's take care, keep good, and stay in touch. We have plenty more things coming.